Hey there folks, I'm Mark, in affiliation with Spectrum Pulse, and it's Billboard Breakdown. I don't remember. So I'm hesitant to give this week on the Hot 100 a ton of intense attention or scrutiny. Sure, there's a few scattered singles that are breaking through, but next week we could well have 3 album bombs competing with each other and total devastation wrought upon whatever's left. So how much can we really care about what's going to cling to relevance now? Especially when I'm still not quite sure what's really grabbed a larger attention, or what will survive. Because one thing's for damn sure, when we take a look at our top 10, I'm not seeing what's gonna break The Box by Roddy Ricch from number 1 anytime soon. And yeah, I'll admit to being kind of surprised how much it's just become a streaming Goliath, a real monster there, even with a considerable sales boost and the radio realizing it might be a good idea to get on board, but I'm also not seeing the decisive hit that might break the hold. Now, Life is Good by Future featuring Drake that debuted this week, it's gonna make an effort. The song also has massive streaming, especially in on-demand, but to my surprise, the radio growth has been a little bit slower, and it's got no significant sales to speak of, so this expected collab at number 2, it might not penetrate as deeply as quickly. What amuses me is that Circles by Post Malone is still holding at number 3, also thanks to just consistency in all categories, which when you subtract the streaming, it's also pretty much the story for Memories by Maroon 5 at number 4, even as the radio spent most of the week wavering more than I expected. Then riding the album boost, we had Lose You to Love Me by Selena Gomez up to number 5. Given the softer streaming, even with all the radio, she's definitely about to take a big hit next week, but she did blow right past Someone You Love by Louis Capaldi at number 6, which spent the week getting a second wind on the radio somehow because nothing makes sense anymore. Hell, it overtook 10,000 Hours by Dan and Shay and Justin Bieber at number 7, which from what I can tell, almost entirely came through twice as many YouTube views, but irregardless of that, it moved past Dance Monkey by Tones and I at number 8, which looks to be running into radio trouble despite consistency elsewhere. Not good. Then we got Roxanne by Arizona Zerva stabilizing at number 9. That's what consistent airplay and streaming will get you. And then the big surprise for me this week, Yummy by Justin Bieber falling to number 10. Now, keep in mind, this song still rules sales and has great streaming and a radio push, but the margins have just opened a lot wider on YouTube and it utterly collapsed in on-demand streaming, which is much more telling on how nobody seems to really like this. For good reason. I mean, I still think the industry push is going to keep it around for longer than we want, but it won't see the same success, I can imagine. And while we're in that territory, our losers and dropouts. And we got some big ones in the latter group this week, with Enemies by Post Malone, Beautiful People by Ed Sheeran featuring Khalid, and after a historic run, Old Town Road by Lil Nas X featuring Billy Ray Cyrus. End of an era, folks. And it's hard not to have a similar feeling with the collapse of many 2019 songs this week. Hot by Young Thug featuring Gunna at 31, Truth Hurts by Lizzo at 33, Lover by Taylor Swift down to 50, Remember You Young by Thomas Rhett at 80, Leave 'Em Alone by Leighton Green, Lil Baby, City Girls, and PNB Rock at 85, 223s by YNW Melly and 9 Glock 9 at 98, and sadly, Nice to Meet Ya by Niall Horan at 95. It's not all bad news though. Footstool Shuffle 2020 by Lil Uzi Vert lost all the gains to 43. Out West by Jack Boys and Young Thug slid down to 65. And PETA by Roddy Ricch and Meek Mill went to 97, along with the expected loss of traction for Into the Unknown by Idina Menzel and Aurora at 90. Watermelon Sugar by Harry Styles at 94. And All I Want by Olivia Rodrigo off the debut to 100. The only real intriguing loss I'm seeing here is Graveyard by a Halsey down to 58, but provided the album boost hits properly, this will rebound. Kinda hope it does, the song's kinda grown on me. But next up we have our gains and returns, and let me make this clear again. I don't expect any of these to last or stick around into next week. Yes, Look at Her Now by Selena Gomez is back at 92, but its album boost was muted. It's not really gonna stick. And when we see our gains, I mean, come on. All Dat by MoneyBagg Yo and Megan Thee Stallion, it's riding its own album boost to 84. Make No Sense by Youngboy Never Broke Again is riding a music video to 79. Say So by Doja Cat's clinging to TikTok dances at 77. And Tusa by Karol G and Nicki Minaj is back at 69 because this song only has had no consistent sustainability over the past several weeks I have mentioned it. These songs, they tend to be casualties of the album bombs. Just saying. Well, anyway, we got a respectable number of new arrivals here, so let's start off with number 89, Protect the Brand by MoneyBagg Yo featuring DaBaby.
Want all the smoke like a strain. Just protecting the brand. Gotta protect the brand. Too much to count right now, I don't got enough hands.
So it might not have gotten a ton of broader attention, but MoneyBagg Yo did put out a new project on the 10th in order to capitalize on some of his newfound chart momentum. And thanks to the DaBaby feature, we got this song here, and honestly, I can see this getting some success on that alone, because it might as well be a DaBaby song with MoneyBagg Yo hopping on a very similar run-on flow and sticking with a similar cavalier nature to his flexing and gunplay. Outside of a couple bars where it almost seems like he's trying to bring a hashtag rap back, and honestly not doing it badly. And look, even with his deeper tone, he does not have DaBaby's charisma. His sole innovation on the formula is interweaving his pronounced ad-libs a little bit more interestingly, but at the same time, with as much as DaBaby is repeating rhymes, it's very clear that MoneyBagg Yo is putting in a bit more effort here. Now, I will say the production's a little more interesting too. The patter of the bass beat and the more textured plucks and hand percussion off the trap skitters and watery keys, there's a lot going on, but the hook doesn't really stand out as much as it could, so it just feels a little bit underwhelming. I mean, it's fine enough, honestly kind of grew on me, but I can't really call it great. At least not yet. Next up, number 86, Conversations in the Dark by John Legend.
World is sleeping, I'm awake with you.
Alright, the last time I was talking about John Legend, it was that stupid as hell Christmas cash-in for Amazon, and now it looks like with this song incorporated into an episode of This Is Us, a show I don't watch, we're getting a similar integration, and okay, look, it's a common in-joke among critics that John Legend's brand of easy-listening R&B music can be kind of tepid, and it's hard for me to listen to this and not feel something similar in the composition and content. The spare acoustics opening up into a reverb-swaddled mix with pianos that are clearly not doing anything that highlights John Legend's virtuosity there, and lyrics that show quiet romantic conversations at home where she gets hung up on her flaws and he just reassures her that she's fine the way she is. And then the lyrics slide a little bit towards oversold when he emphasizes all the plans he's blowing off the next morning, but I don't know, you can tell he's framing this with sincerity, so I'm not gonna come down that hard on him. But overall, again, it's fine, but it's nothing great or exceptional. Even with the easy listening audience waiting for this, I can't see it having a lot of staying power. Just saying. Next up, number 83, 11 by Khalid. Look, let's not mince words. It feels like Khalid's rushing this next round of singles for his next album, and for an artist who has built up so much of his appeal on cultivating the vibe, it's utterly exasperating when that rush will show through. And between the fidgety bass warp, the awkward tuning of that guitar loop, and all the autotune he smothers his voice in on the bridge, all of which he thinks translates to a driving song when it doesn't have the tempo or groove to really lock into it, learn from Harry Styles. I mean, it certainly feels and sounds like a rush job, but also like the sort of song that would come from getting high in your car and trying to entice and impress this girl. And yet, am I the only one kind of amused that when Khalid highlights how late it is, he says it's 11? I mean, it's like Summer Nights from Greece, where they have to revise the lyrics to how late they say out to make it seem a little bit more timely and risque, and this song can't even lock into that right. So, no, this isn't good, it's not interesting either, but it's also in the uniquely bad place where it only becomes interesting for the missteps. Again, not a good sign. Next up, number 30, Rare by Selena Gomez.
Why don't you recognize I'm so rare?
I didn't really discuss this song when I covered the album Rare last week, and that's mostly because, like most of the album, didn't leave much of an impact beyond being a vaguely annoyed song that this guy isn't giving her enough attention because she's so rare. Which is kind of ironic because her sound in this project is so dime a dozen and easily forgettable outside the line where she talks about getting older and burning toast. Do people lose the ability to make toast properly as they get older or something? Why is this line even here? Does it have to do with that kick drum that sounds like hitting a pot with a wooden spoon? Are we just in the kitchen right now? I mean, beyond that, I'm stuck feeling this barely even has a tune beyond a fiddly groove and an over-reliance on Selena Gomez's vocals, which any sane producer would realize is the least important element in the mix. Hell, even Marshmello got that right. But coming from Sir Nolan here, it's no surprise. But yeah, if there's a new arrival that I see falling off hard next week, is this one. Just not a lot to it. Next up, number 29, You Should Be Sad by Halsey.
I tried to help you, it just made you mad.
So I made 3 observations about Manic when I reviewed it yesterday that seem apropos here. That Halsey threw herself across genre diversions to the point where it got a little distracting, in this case sliding into Maren Morris-esque pop country with Greg Kurstin of all people producing, and 2, that she's had to explain her intended subtext on Twitter when it didn't come through properly in her delivery, which occurred when she cusses out an ex sounding grateful that she didn't have a baby with him, only to later highlight how much she actually wants a baby later on the album. She intended this to be tongue-in-cheek, she says, but again, number 3, it's a song where G-Eazy's shadow lingers a lot heavier than any serious castigation that Halsey brings. Kind of a shame, because otherwise I kind of like those blown-out shrill blasts of guitar off the acoustics and pedal steel. I mean, it's not really that country in the composition and compared with some of the production, but I do hear the influence, and if we're comparing G-Eazy breakup songs, I prefer this to Without Me any day. So yeah, it's not bad, and honestly, this might be pretty good, but if we want a song that's emblematic of all my observations and criticisms with her last album, might be this one. Better and for worse. Number 17, Good News by Mac Miller.
No, they don't like you when I'm done.
Look, I've said a number of times, I'm not a Mac Miller fan. I really didn't like Swimming, so I wasn't planning to cover Circles. I don't tend to cover posthumous albums as a rule anyway, and while he intended it as a direct follow-up, I figured it'd be in my best interest to just stay out of it. But okay, the song from said album did debut pretty high this week, and there might be an album bomb coming, and yeah, it's playing along the same territory as Swimming, but does sound better, and yet I'm just not clicking with it at all. And yet it's absolutely the sort of song where I can see the audience for it, and I can see this working. The liquid but slightly off-kilter guitar and spare bass and drums, they work with Mac's awkward singing, all of which contributes to the secluded but oddly prophetic vibe of feeling too many expectations, the constant string of unnecessary apologies that he makes, the discomfort of everyone around him when he's either vulnerable or successful, and just the exhausted musings that something more is somewhere else and he might be heading there. And it just fits together into the shuddering, awkward musing. For a Mac Miller fan, it's probably heartbreaking, but I'm not a Mac Miller fan. And while I'm empathetic to his struggle, it hits a note that just doesn't work with me the way it should. And you know what, hey, you can't expect emotional resonance with art, even if that you respect and understand it, and that's okay. Just not for me. That's all. Number 16, Something to Prove by Lil Baby.
I got something to prove. Yeah, I'm young, but got something to lose. In the street, I didn't pay all my dues.
Granted, you can also find cases where there's no emotional resonance for very different reasons, like the oily synth choices off the odd dribble of the snare and the hi-hat, and Lil Baby's increasingly overwritten clumsiness in his flow that's got this weird Big Sean vibe to how it ever so slightly fits off beat, but at least Big Sean will occasionally say something interesting, where I feel like I've heard Lil Baby talk about his come up and his flexing dozens of times before. It's just so colorless, and while I can appreciate bars about saving for the future, it's kind of odd seeing them juxtaposed with all the luxury cars he's purchased, probably where a lot more of the money is going, and the line where some girl says that she loves him to death and he tells her to stop breathing. Coupled with no real emphasis on the hook in order to emphasize it or differentiate it, I'm just left thinking that Lil Baby dropped another utterly forgettable trap song where the only memorable parts, they're the ones that annoy me. Bad sign. I'll pass. And finally, number 2, Life is Good by Future featuring Drake.
Niggas swear they passed us, they doing too much. Haven't done my taxes, I'm too turned up.
You know, I've been hearing rumors for a few months now about Future and Drake teasing another What a Time to Be Alive collaboration project, and I'm stuck remembering the album bomb from last time and this deep sinking feeling in my gut. And what's telling is that it wasn't even so bad so much as it signaled the oversaturation of Drake to come. And besides, is this even really much a collaboration at all? Drake and Future's parts are split into snippets that are fused together from different producers with no real transition transition, which is kind of a shame because for as shallow as Drake's flexing and pettiness is, especially when he's not paying his taxes, it is certainly a more preferable vibe to Future comparing himself multiple times to the Taliban. He's done this before. Yes, he's clearly wallowing in bad taste and drug abuse, drugs he doesn't do, which I think is important to remember and highlight. But at this point, if Future's trying to highlight life being good, why are you still shooting people and sounding so miserable doing it? My larger point is that there's just not much chemistry or a coherent vibe here. It's written and produced probably in different studios, likely in different countries, and leads to a disjointed and underwhelming song that I honestly can't see lasting that long. This got success in the collab name alone, but I don't expect it to last. But you know what, that's our week. Man, not a lot that stands out either way, but worse, I'm throwing into Some to Prove by DaBaby, with Dishonourable Mention on 11 by Khalid, just for as much of a misstep as it seems to be. I'm a little worried about that next album. Best... Honestly, I think the one that succeeds the most in what it's trying to do is Protect the Brand by MoneyBagg Yo featuring DaBaby, so it's getting best of the week. But the close honorable mention is You Should Be Sad by Halsey, if only for the guitar and the pedal steel that sound really good. Next week, more Halsey, and more Mac Miller too, but the larger story will be just how much Eminem will impact the charts, so we'll have to see. But until then, I'm Mark, you're watching Billboard Breakdown, affiliated with Spectrum Pulse.